And Chuff, when he arrives to the UK, he fills up halls with people who claim that they are from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In fact, there is not only Chuff. There are other claimants to being faith healers who come to the shores of the UK and are actually promoted by people within the masajid, by people from within the community, who then take advantage of ill people, people who may have mental disabilities, people who have physical disabilities. And this has become a common problem to the point that many people are not actually pulling up the likes of Chuff and taking him to task for what he is doing. Of course, in Pakistan, many of the ulama did not take Chuff to task until recently. A journalist, he approached Chuff and even attended his center, and he refuted him with regard to his faith healing. But this is a cultural cancer. What I would refer to this is a cultural cancer within many communities, within the Indo-Pak community. We have a cultural cancer with regard to fake healers. These fake healers take advantage of vulnerable people, and the public do not know how to carry out actual spiritual healing. How do we carry out actual spiritual healing? Spiritual healing is done through Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Al-Quran Al-Kareem, as I mentioned, that we reveal from this Quran that which is shifa. And from the shifa, which is a cure, is al-mu'awwidhatayn. What is al-mu'awwidhatayn? Al-mu'awwidhatayn is reciting Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas. As-Sayyidatu Aisha radiyallahu anha states that before the revelation of al-mu'awwidhatayn, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would recite various ad'iyah, various supplications and adhkar, litanies. But when Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas were revealed, he left reciting other things in abundance and would simply recite these two surahs of the Quran and blow them on the palm of his blessed hands and then wipe the face and the entire body prior to going to sleep. This was done by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is from the Sunnah. Similarly, reciting Ayatul Kursi, that we know from the famous hadith of Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anh, narrated in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari, that anyone who recites Ayatul Kursi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places a guardian angel to protect them from throughout the night until the morning. Now, abandoning the Sunnah and adopting bid'ah, adopting innovations in the deen, is from the hallmarks of khasara, of being at a loss. Abandoning the teachings of Al-Quran Al-Kareem and abandoning the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then resorting to faith healers who do not actually recite Al-Quran Al-Kareem. You see, if this Chuff, whom they refer to as Haq Badshah Sarkar, was actually reciting the Quran, Al-Quran Al-Kareem, reciting it and then blowing on the patients, then we would say that he is actually following the Sunnah of reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, like the story of the man who was stung by a scorpion, and the Sahabi radiallahu anh recited upon him, blew upon him, and this affected the ruh, which leads to physical cures also. To elaborate on that, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah in his book Zadul Ma'ad, there is a segment of Zadul Ma'ad which is a Tibb al-Nabawi, a famous book. In that segment, he mentions that ailments start with spiritual illnesses, and then later they develop into physical illnesses. In the early stages, if a person recites the Quran with the ruqyah, he blows, that leads to the curing of the spiritual ailment, which will then not develop into a physical ailment. So catching the ailment in its early developmental stages, in its embryonic stages, is essential by reciting Al-Quran Al-Kareem for shifa. So reciting the Quran and blowing the Quran upon the people is from the Sunnah and established from the Sunnah. Later, when those ailments become physical ailments, then a person must resort to medicine also. So medicine is essential in Islam. Al-Imam Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i famously said that a person should not live in a locality where there is no tabib, where there is no doctor, and where there is no alim. There should be someone for the deen who can answer your questions, and similarly there should be someone who can cure you from physical ailments. So ruqya is from Al-Quran Al-Kareem and from the Sunnah. But chuff and the likes of chuff in the peer culture, you see, we live in an age of extremes. You have the deviant Mirza engineer. This Mirza engineer is at the other extreme of deviancy. He denies, in fact, he insulted a Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu, and even made a mockery of a Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu, and giving a similitude of the Iron Dome with a Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu. This insult to a Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu, the byproduct of his afkar, is the other extreme. And at one extreme we have the likes of chuff, people who fleece people for their money and for their frailties and their disabilities, and take advantage of those people. But at the other end we have people who deny any spiritual healing. These are the two extremes. And Pakistani society has already been polarized. Similarly in India and Bangladesh, there is a polarization in everything, from the rich and the poor, from the politicians and the people. But similarly, between those who act upon the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the middle way, you have people on the outskirts of the Ahl Sunnah, those who claim to be spiritual guides in this day and age. And at the other extreme, you have the likes of Chuff, the likes of Mirza engineer, who misguide the people with regard to real Awliyaullah as-Salihun, the people of Allah, and make a mockery of Awliyaullah as-Salihun. So we have Awliyaullah as-Salihun, the pious awliya, who were actual ulama. Remember, many of the places which people visit today, those places where pious people are buried, those pious people were people who taught Al-Quran Al-Kareem and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is the proof for that? That many of our asanid, chains of narration, they go through the likes of those ulama who are buried in Pakistan and India today. People who taught Al-Bukhari. For instance, one of the best manuscripts of Sahih al-Bukhari, of Al-Imam al-Bukhari rahimallahu ta'ala, was preserved by Radiyuddin, who was As-Saghani, Radiyuddin As-Saghani, a linguist from where, a lexicographer, who was born in the city of Lahore. In which year did he pass away? In the year 650 Hijri. 650 Hijri. Today we are in the year 1445. So you can imagine this. He passed away nearly 800 years ago. An alim of the deen who preserved the Sahih of Imam Bukhari was from Lahore.